All right, we're all getting settled in here. Um, while we are oh, it says I'm muted. Am I muted?
Nope, you're good.
I don't think so.
You're
Yeah.
good.
While we're waiting for everybody to join, feel free to pop into the chat where you're coming in from, and something you're hoping maybe learn from today. If you've ever worked with Shift Positive before or come to one of our webinars.
Yeah, I'm always curious for whom is this one of your first times joining us?
Oh, I'm seeing a hand up. Another hand up.
Hey, Bill,
Welcome.
thanks for joining. Here's Irene, somebody that we
Somebody
know.
from Minneapolis.
Hi,
All
Irene.
right, good to be here.
Nice to have you here. A lot of new names,
Hello from Germany.
really.
Thank you, Laura.
Okay, I got to check out the chat
Massachusetts,
here. Hmm.
Alberta. Not my first time. Welcome back.
We're here in Minneapolis, and Andrew is in Nebraska with Change Positive. So it's nice to have you here.
We have a longtime listener here, Lucas. Good to see
Hmm.
you, Lucas.
Oh, there's Eli too. So I think we're in luck because we had 99 people register and my Zoom account goes up to 100. So
Let's see. Sao Paulo. Welcome, Carlos.
mm,
California.
fantastic.
Another Minnesota folk.
We are getting our first snows here in Minnesota. So it's freezing outside. We're not used to it yet. It's always shakes us up a little bit when it begins. And then people need to learn how to drive again. So last night, everybody was trying to relearn how to drive in snow.
Always takes a day or two.
Hmm.
I see Lindsay laughing. She knows.
Definitely true. But I also had that like low dip in the mood that comes when the first snow comes, where you're like, oh yeah, here we go again. It's time to go hibernate
Mhm.
indoors.
Hmm. Hmm.
Should have decorated last weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. What should have done those leaves one more time. Mhm. Well,
All
it's
right, folks
wonderful
are
to have
joining. We're just putting where we're calling in from, and if you have been able to join us before in one of our workshops.
nice. Palm Springs, that sounds lovely, Eli.
Yes.
We're waiting for all of you to come.
Oh no, Sandra's experiencing a trauma response with their first snow. It gets better, I think.
Well, we have a lot of people joining us from Canada, so you might be experiencing this too. Good. Well, as people continue to join, I think that we should go ahead and begin. What do you think, Andrew? All right. So I'll introduce Andrew Bridger, who maybe you see on your screen is going to be helping us with the chat and putting some things out there for your information. And then we've got Kristen, who's helping to monitor questions, and she'll interrupt me as questions come up if it's appropriate to do it then. Otherwise, we'll save those for the Q&A period. And any particular things that you want assistance with, just put them in the chat, and these two will help to make sure that this goes smoothly. And I just want to again introduce myself and say how grateful I am for you being here. My name is Pete Berridge and founder of the Change Positive and help to develop this Shift Positive method that you're going to be hearing about today. So I'm going to share screen and get us going. And if you're interested, you can find out more about the methodology by reading our book, Feedback Reimagined, available on Amazon, or you can email us directly, and we can get it for you there. So we want to learn a little bit about you by having you go out to Mentimeter. So if you were to scan this, or there's going to be a link in the chat to tell us a little bit about who you are, so that we can make sure that we are addressing the needs that you are bringing to us here. And I will switch over to that so that we can see.
Hello.
Yeah. So let's take a look and see who it is that's joining us today. All right, so we've got some leaders in organizations, some managers, some leadership development professionals, HR leaders, some coaches, and then no simple passerbyers right now. So we'll see if anybody is just joining because they found this to be interested and somehow it ended up in their inbox. Good. Okay. So this might be more straight managers and leaders than we've had in the past as kind of a percentage, because usually we're speaking to leadership development professionals, a lot of HR leaders, a lot of coaches. So it's wonderful to have you joining us. We'll come back to this in a little bit. That is going to stay available to you. But let me switch us back over. Okay. So while you're telling us about you, I want to tell you a little bit about us. So at Change Positive, with the Shift Positive method, we're really on a mission to change the feedback experience by leveraging two things: positive psychology and social support. And our goal is to really create cultures that embrace open dialogue, transparency, constructive feedback, and collaborative growth, where staff become an ally to one another in their professional development. How do we learn and grow as professionals? And what we do then is we bring a number of different methodologies and tools for doing that. That includes conducting the Shift Positive 360, a 360 methodology that's done by coaches and leadership development professionals, by providing coaching for leaders, by doing manager workshops on best feedback skills and how to be good at providing feedback, by doing staff training, by doing team facilitation so that teams can talk directly to each other in a more constructive way. And now what we're going to be showing you today are technology platforms. So one particular one that we're going to be using today that enable organizations to scale better feedback throughout the organization and make it available to all. So that's what we do. And this is what it looks like, how it is that we bring that and serve an entire organization to help create these cultures of constructive feedback. But we have a second thing now that we know you were primed. You maybe came here because you wanted to learn how to provide difficult feedback to somebody. So for a moment, I want you to think about somebody for whom you have tough feedback. A colleague of yours, one of your staff, maybe it's even personal, but bring somebody to mind. And then we want you to go here and begin to enter. What is that you would want to say to them? What is the change that you would want to see? So think of somebody, and then what is it that you would actually want to say to them? Don't micromanage me. Give me better direction on what I should be working on. We want this to be something that is very useful to you. Stop trying to control projects and trust team members. To notice what needs doing, to take initiative, to communicate better with our team. Slow down. Take more time to actively listen. Okay. And the more descriptive you can be, the better. I'd like them to stop doing this or to do this instead. What is it that you would want to be able to say to them or that you would want them to change? Take initiative. Okay. That's come up a couple of times here. Make decisions and stop asking me for input all the time. Okay. Make difficult decisions more quickly. Get organized. Use more systems instead of shooting from the hip. Okay. Get rid of the fear of offering feedback. Have a positive mindset. Manage emotions. Please tell me how I can better present ideas to you so that you're more open to listening. So listening's coming up again. Better think about the needs of your business rather than what you want to do. Be present even if working from home. Oh, interesting. You're overwhelmed and it's causing you to spin or spiral. questions you asked were not necessary. So let's see if we can begin to group some of these and get a sense of what are some of those themes that are coming up. Okay, so we've got 5 here. There were 12 responses around positive mindset, 5 on communication, 4 on micromanagement, 3 on decision making, and then initiative. Okay. So let me go into this one, positive mindset. Let's work on having a positive mindset and how to manage emotions during time of uncertainty and change. What could it look like to see the positive in your colleagues' behavior? Don't focus on failure, but on solutions. Be more engaged at work, improvement or behavior change. Get organized and use more systems. Okay. Some of them, when it groups these are a little bit closer to the theme, some a little bit further. I need more challenging assignments. You're overwhelmed and it's causing you to spiral. Okay. So a lot about being positive and not spiraling. Okay. So let's try one more thing here. Let's review a couple. Let's actually review a couple more. Open communication. Communicate better. Slow down. Take time to actively listen. Okay. So what we're going to do is select one of these that we'll then use with a demonstration in a short period here. Okay. I think I'm going to hold on the voting of that until we get to that place. Okay. So let me take this back then. All right. So we just grabbed a little bit about what it is that you wish that you could say to somebody, that feedback that you would want to be able to share with them. So next, we have a lot of people joining us for the first time. And so we want to talk a little bit about how and why feedback is broken. And then we want to talk about a new approach. And finally, then do a demo leveraging an AI trained in the Shift Positive method. And as a former HR leader, I was often helping managers to figure out how to give feedback to their staff or to each other. And I was designing or implementing feedback systems. And similarly, as a coach, I was often using a 360 tool to provide feedback to my clients. However, I became keenly aware that this was often uncomfortable and difficult for my client and even for me to do. So the question then is, why? Why is it so hard? And that's where I started to dig into the research and found that more than a third of the time, feedback interventions lead to a decrease in performance. And why is that? I think it's because of design and delivery flaws, not because of poor intention. So oftentimes feedback is tied to promotion or compensation decisions, and that compromises intent. Or almost always it's confidential. And so people don't know the context. Who is saying this? What's the tone in which it's being offered? And the focus becomes on what's not working rather than what to do instead. Just as you saw as people were putting comments in the Mentimeter. And it lacks ongoing support and follow through by the people around them. And then from a delivery standpoint, it lacks a focus on strengths, and that drives disengagement. And it's not being done in a timely and frequent and ongoing way. We just simply don't know how to talk to each other in this way. And so then the question is, what's underneath it all? And the answer to that is our physiology is underneath it all. How our brain developed, how it works, the negativity bias, and inattentional blindness. Feedback receivers have a negativity bias. They're on alert for potential threats. And feedback providers, likewise, have a negativity bias. We quickly see what's not working for us in that other individual. And that then becomes a bad combination. That's why feedback can be difficult. So, figured there must be a better way to provide feedback, and tough feedback, yet in a constructive way. So, research has moved forward. It's moved ahead. We have better insights into how to make feedback more effective. There's really good research into strengths, positive emotions, appreciative inquiry, solution-focused coaching, social network analysis by these amazing researchers and practitioners. And this is the work that we studied in developing the Shift Positive method. So let's talk about what we think makes feedback its best, when it is at its best. And it's when you trust the intention of the person that's sharing it with you. It's truly for your benefit. You can feel that they have your best interest in mind. Also, when you have context to the feedback, you understand the circumstances. Where is it happening? When is it happening? With whom is it happening? And the feedback is developmental rather than evaluative. We're looking forward about what we can grow toward rather than looking backward and evaluating that and judging that. And when you understand what to do rather than what not to do, it's not a focus on weaknesses. And also you have a way of understanding how my strengths in this area could help me in that new area. And we can apply those strengths in that developmental area. When it happens on an ongoing basis, it's done in a timely way. It becomes part of the culture. And when you feel you've got social support going forward to help reinforce changes that you choose to make. So out of all of that today, I really just want to focus on 3 aspects of constructive feedback and what's built into the Shift Positive method. And so I'm just going to be talking briefly about strengths, growth, and allyship, those 3 components. So earlier I mentioned design flaws. A key one is a lack of focus and reinforcement of strengths as part of feedback. And what we know from Tom Rath's research in StrengthsFinder 2.0 is that if a supervisor focused on an employee's strengths, the probability of them becoming actively disengaged is only 1%. We often talk about employee engagement, and only 1% of employees who receive feedback on their strengths become actively disengaged. What's striking is that 22% of the actively disengaged report that they received feedback on their weaknesses, which is a marked change. But then what it really raises the question is, okay, so where do they actively disengage come from? And the answer is that they simply were ignored. They didn't receive feedback on their strengths or weaknesses. They were simply ignored by their manager. So that idea that no news is good news is simply wrong. So what makes the delivery of feedback broken? All too often, feedback isn't happening. And when it is, it's done poorly. The easiest thing you can do as a manager or somebody influencing managers is to look for and reinforce the strengths of your staff. Look for and reinforce the strengths of your colleagues, and you'll get more of those behaviors. So that's just a teeny tiny bit about the research into strengths and what's behind our methodology. So now let's shift into growth. And many of you, maybe if you've joined us before, have seen this, but the quick quiz is this. How many branches are on this tree?
Feel free to put that in the chat if you have any guesses.
Here's the answer. The answer is there are a lot of branches on this tree. And so then the question is, how many faces are on this tree? And it's fun to see people start leaning in forward in their computer, and they start counting because they see a face here and 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 here. And here's the Ben Franklin, and here's the little scary baby kind of looking up through the tree. So there's about 11 different faces that begin to appear when you start looking for them. So I used this term earlier, that inattentional blindness. And that's a phenomenon that happens with our brain. We don't notice what we're not looking for. We don't see what we aren't looking for. So if I ask you to count the branches, you see the branches. If I ask you to count the faces, you begin to see the faces. And with feedback, we want to prime you to see what it is that you want from your colleague rather than what you don't, to see the behaviors that will make them even more effective in working with you, not simply to point out what's not working. And so unless you take the time to truly think about what success looks like, your colleague is going to be guessing, and you probably won't recognize the change when it begins to happen. You need to see it first in your own mind's eye to be able to convey it in a way that they can understand it so that they can actually start to experiment and try it. And that means overcoming that negativity bias in our biology. So here's a simple way to do that we teach people. How to be intentional when offering feedback, to go beyond what it is that we don't want and identify what we do want, what's going to make it better for us relative to that person. So we talk about moving to a solution-focused rather than a problem-focused approach to this relationship. So first, on the problem-focused. This left-hand side, these are the kinds of things that might naturally come up. You saw some of these come up in the Mentimeter. You know, they're always negative. They need to be involved in everything. They don't trust me or they don't trust others. They need to control everything. They're the micromanager, those kinds of things. I can tell you that that sort of feedback when offering that to an employee or to a coaching client, so forth, is really useless. This is where we need to go further. And that takes intention to move to the other side, to the solution side. What is it that you would see instead? When would it happen? Where would it happen? Then we start to come up with these things as people begin to see it in their own mind's eye and think about what they do want. They would start with possibilities. This person would be clear about who's doing what. They'd share their own concerns, fears, and vulnerabilities. They'd ask about my ideas and my hopes. Now, I'm sure if I asked any of you, what would you put on this side, knowing what's on the left-hand side, you probably wouldn't come up with these exact same things because it's relative to you. And with each one of these, we could go a little deeper, in being clear about who's doing what. When would that happen? Where would that happen? Is that our Monday staff meeting? Is that at the close of meetings? We would clearly say who's doing what. So this is the work that we want you to do. And you can do this yourself, simply on a piece of paper. When you've got feedback for somebody, draw a big T. And what's the problem that you want the person to stop? Put that on the left-hand side. And next, on the right-hand side, what's the solution? What would you want to see instead in behavioral detail? And here's the kicker. Even if you never tell the other person what's on the right-hand side, you'll have primed yourself to see what you want rather than seeing the left-hand side of the behavior and saying, oh, there they go again. So when it does happen, you'll notice it. You'll reinforce those desired behaviors, perhaps in subtle yet influential ways, through a smile, a nod. Maybe you offer a comment about how much better that meeting was or how that clarity really helped you. And it's through those little nudges we give each other that change begins to stick, which takes us to the third area, social support. If you take a moment to consider a time when you've changed, when you've grown, who is there to help you? Who is the one person who was paramount in that change for you? And this is crucial when improving our approach to feedback, becoming an ally, identifying what we can do to support the person for whom we have feedback. Why? Because feedback is relative in relation to the person providing it, to us. It's not truth. It's our truth. It's our perception. It just takes adjustment and commitment by both of us to sustain that change. If the person you have feedback for whom you're asking to make change, to do something different, how is it that you're going to reinforce that? How are you going to help them with that? What will you do to support them? And so in our approach, we ask people to identify one thing that you're willing to do to support them. If you're wanting them to move in this direction, what are you going to do to support them, your colleague, in going forward in that way? Okay, so those are the three areas: strengths, growth, and allyship. So in addition to those, there's one other concept that I wanted to share with you, and that is about addressing confidentiality. We believe that confidentiality is a symptom of a broken system. When we don't know how to say something constructively, we say it confidentially. In a strengths, solution, and ally approach, confidentiality is unnecessary. Context matters. How to work better with you. What do you need from them? So when you're able to identify clearly on that right-hand side, I would leave these meetings with clarity of who's doing what by when. That's much easier to share. And it doesn't need to be confidential, and it shouldn't be confidential because it's how they're going to be more effective with you. So overall, our methodology at Change Positive with the Shift Positive method is different than traditional feedback. And here are some of the ways. And this sort of information is available on our website. But you see the differences in how it is that we can move to being open, being future-oriented, being developmental, and creating two-way accountability. So there are the components. Now we want to get into the demo. And as we go through the demo, I want you to look for how strengths, growth, and allyship come up. Can you identify those components? And how do those help in the conversation? So we're going to go back and look at the situations you've put forward, what you wanted to say. We're going to pick one of those. Then we're going to interact with a Shift Positive trained AI agent or assistant to help us craft our feedback, to coach us in how to actually have that conversation with that person. And again, we'll want you to see if you can identify those components. Okay? So actually, I should probably pause and ask Kristen, were there any questions that came up as I went through the concepts behind the methodology?
Not so far in the chat. If for any reason you are curious about a question, you can certainly private message me too, and I can share it anonymously if that gives you any more confidence.
Good, good. All right. So the tough feedback. So I think maybe we should try the positive mindset. And in going to this one, let's see if we can now have you vote on the one that you would want me to use as I role model with the AI agent and have the AI agent help me to craft that feedback for that individual. So if you go back out there, you should now have opportunity to actually vote on them. Let's see if that's working. Otherwise, I'll have to pick one. Oh, we have one person voting. 3 people. Good. 5. Which one would you want to see me do a demo with? 9.
You're saying it's hard to pick just one. That's a good topic.
We might have time to do more than one. We'll see. 10, 11, 12. All right. Well, let's see if we can get to 15 and then we'll close the voting. Oh, we're at 15. Okay. Oh, still going. All right. Well, maybe we'll get to 20. Well, let's try that. I'm going to hit enter here and we'll see what comes up. Positive mindset. Okay, that one seems to be the overwhelming one. Let's work on having a positive mindset and how to manage emotions during times of uncertainty and change. Okay. I want a senior leader to not be scared of providing constructive feedback, be more engaged at work, don't focus on failure, but on solutions. Okay, I'm going to use some of these as I start interacting then with the Shift Positive agent. Oh, you're overwhelmed and it's causing you to spiral. Okay. These are great. Thank you. So let's give it a try. Oh, one other thing. In the chat, give me a name for this person. Who is it that I'm talking to that I have this feedback for? Which ones are
Ryan, John,
Ryan,
Peggy.
Ryan, John, Peggy. Okay. Okay. I'm going to go with the first one. I'm going to go with Ryan. Okay. Sounds like somebody has somebody in mind. Yeah, I understand that you can help me with coming up with some feedback.
Welcome. I understand that you want to learn how to give someone tough feedback. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Good, I can help. The Shift Positive method is grounded in positive psychology and social support. Feedback can be difficult because of the negativity bias. We naturally focus more on what's going wrong. This makes feedback tricky because when receiving feedback, people are on guard for criticism, and when giving it, we often focus on what's not working. To counter this, we'll focus on identifying what you want to see more of, describing it in detail, and offering constructive steps forward. Also, feedback is relational. It's about how you can support your colleague as an ally in their growth. Are you ready to begin? If so, can you share your name and the name of the colleague you'd like to provide feedback about?
Yeah, my name is Pete and the colleague's name is Ryan.
Thanks, Pete. Let's get started. What's the tough feedback you have for Ryan? Take your time and tell me what's on your mind.
So I think that Ryan just has a really negative mindset. He really doesn't know how to manage his emotions as we're going through lots of change, and he gets stuck. He gets stressed out.
I hear you, Pete. It sounds like Ryan's stress during times of change is impacting how he shows up, and that's tough for the team and for him. Let's reframe this into something solution focused. If Ryan were managing change and his emotions more effectively, what would you notice? What behaviors or actions would show that he's handling things in a positive way?
Well, I think he'd stop getting so overwhelmed because he just spirals out of control, and it really has an impact on the energy of everybody else.
Got it, Pete. Let's think about what Ryan could do instead to create a positive energy. For example, could he take a moment to focus on solutions during stressful situations, or maybe approach challenges with a calm, step-by-step mindset? What would that look like in practice?
I don't get to see that very often. He doesn't show up that way. I'm not exactly sure.
That's understandable, Pete. Let's try looking for moments where Ryan might have shown even a little bit of that behavior, even if it was brief. Maybe a time when he stayed calm or tackled a challenge thoughtfully. Can you think of any instance, even small, where he handled something well? What did he do then?
Well, he's quick to focus on failures. And so if we lose a client, he gets really upset.
Thanks for sharing that, Pete. Let's flip that. If Ryan were handling those moments effectively, maybe he could focus on learning from the situation or brainstorming solutions to prevent it in the future. What would it look like if he channeled his energy into problem solving rather than focusing on the failure?
Okay, I like a little bit of that. Say more about that.
Sure. Imagine Ryan loses a client, and instead of getting upset, he shifts to asking constructive questions like, what can we learn from this? Or what could we do differently next time? He could gather the team to brainstorm improvements or focus on next steps. This would show leadership by keeping the energy forward looking. What do you think? Can you see Ryan approaching situations in that way?
I like the forward looking, but I think it's really important how he says it, because still he could say the same thing and his energy is going to come across as blaming.
Great point, Pete. The how really matters. What if Ryan worked on delivering his thoughts with a calmer, more measured tone? For example, instead of reacting with intensity, he could pause, take a breath, and approach the conversation with curiosity, asking questions calmly and encouraging dialogue. How would that shift in energy affect the team?
The team would fall off of their chairs if he showed up that way.
That's a strong visual, Pete. It sounds like Ryan showing up with calm curiosity could really transform the team's energy. Let's make it actionable. What's one small step Ryan could take to begin shifting toward that kind of presence? Maybe pausing before reacting or practicing how he frames questions. What comes to mind?
I like the pausing, thinking about his energy when he's asking questions, I think is going to have the biggest impact.
That's a great start, Pete. Pausing to check his energy before asking questions could help Ryan shift how he's perceived and create a more positive atmosphere. If he consistently practiced this, the team might feel more open and energized around him. What's one thing you could do to support Ryan as he works on this? Maybe giving him feedback when you notice his tone improving, or encouraging him to pause when things get intense.
I think either of those I'm fine with. I mean, I can certainly watch for it. I mean, I'll definitely notice it. So I'm happy to let him know if I think it had a good impact in the room.
That's a fantastic way to support Ryan, Pete. Letting him know when his tone has a positive impact will reinforce those changes and help him stay on track. To summarize, you'd like Ryan to pause and think about the energy behind his questions to create a more constructive and forward-looking atmosphere. A small step he can take is to pause before reacting and approach situations calmly. You'll commit to noticing these changes and giving him feedback when he makes progress. Does that feel accurate? Are you ready to share these insights with Ryan?
Okay, I think I want to actually practice it a little bit and get your feedback.
Great idea, Pete. Let's practice. Go ahead and imagine you're sharing this feedback with Ryan. How would you start the conversation?
Ryan, I think that you have an outsized impact on the energy of the people around you. You're an influential person. And what I think is going to really help is if when we do have a setback or a challenge, really taking a breath and thinking about, one, asking open-ended questions, but two, really thinking about the tone in which you're asking them with some curiosity. If you'd like to do that, I'd be happy to help you with that and watch for the impact it has on people. But I think that would go a long way in helping us through these trying times.
That's a strong start, Pete. You're acknowledging Ryan's influence in a positive way, which builds trust, and you're offering clear, actionable steps. To refine it, you might make the feedback even more specific by describing a scenario, like saying, for example, when we lose a client, pausing to reflect before reacting could shift the energy and focus everyone on solutions. Also, your offer of support is great. You could add something like, I'll let you know when I see it making a difference. It reinforces your role as an ally. How does that feel to you?
That feels a lot better than where I was when I came into this.
That's great to hear, Pete. You've really shifted toward a constructive and supportive approach. It sounds like you're ready to have a meaningful conversation with Ryan. Let me know if you want to fine-tune anything else or practice again.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome, Pete. You've got this. Let me know if you need any more support along the way.
You're my cheerleader. Thanks. Okay. So I'm going to stop there, and the conversation is captured. So let me go back then and all right. So that's an example of, well, let me ask just for reactions to what it is that you saw there. In this one, go ahead and unmute yourself, and questions that you've got or things that you noticed in the interaction. Are there any coming up in the chat, Kristen?
Not just yet. Got some folks laughing about a joke about Aaron Rodgers needing some feedback.
Aaron Rodgers, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, somebody, Julie said, notice that the AI asked questions first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like talking to a good positive psychology coach.
Mm-hmm.
That's from Irene.
Yeah.
Bethany shared, I like the step-by-step style and how approachable it was.
So I want to share a little bit about my experience in doing it. So I didn't know what would come up. Now, obviously, I'm steeped in this approach. And yet I can easily imagine that same thing. I can imagine a person where it's like they get upset. They have this oversized impact on the energy of the people around them, and how difficult it is to just feel like, how am I going to talk to this person about that? And it's really these pretty basic questions about, what would you want? At first, what you maybe noticed is she acknowledged my pain. which I found to be really helpful. That sounds hard. That sounds difficult. Sometimes that language can really, really help. And then it's moving into, so what would you want? So if you imagine that T-chart again and getting that constructive side, what would it look like? She asked me, when have you lost a client and yet his reaction was better, different? And how would you describe that? That's always an avenue that you can go down. And then the strengths, where this person, I imagine that they have an outsized impact on the room. And when it actually got to how am I going to help this individual, that seemed easy to me. Yeah, I can watch for that. I'm happy to talk to you about that. I can let you know how I think that it's impacting the room. So it's a pretty simple formula, but it takes some intentionality to get there. Yeah.
There was an additional comment about how they were impressed that you could talk to the AI as though you were talking to a real person. You didn't have to accommodate or change your language when interacting with it.
Frankly, I've been really impressed with the quality of the interactions and how well it does at coaching. Now, we've spent 16 months bringing AI into some of our tools. So there's one that we're going to be launching in December, and it is basically the Shift Positive 360, and it's an AI version of that. So the biggest, the way in which our Shift Positive 360 has been used to date is primarily with high-level leaders, where there is a coach that is going through that exact same process, but it is the full Shift Positive 360 interview. And then that gets consolidated, that gets shared with the leader. They do a development plan and they work on that development plan, and then we measure the results. And it has remarkable impact. It's been proven to be successful. And so now our coaches and companies have been asking, how do we scale this? How do we provide it to our developing leaders? We want to do more of this. And so about 16, 18 months ago, we started looking at how can we take some of the same concepts from the Shift Positive methodology and create that as a GPT assistant. So we provided it with specific information about our philosophy, how to respond to questions posed regarding the overall Shift Positive 360, and each specific question of the survey itself, and to provide guidance to participants in the survey. So now when working with a rising leader and we want to gather feedback for that individual, it actually can be self-administered with the interview being conducted by the AI assistant. So it doesn't require the coach or their leadership development professional to schedule and conduct all of the interviews. And then the coach can work with the leader to debrief the feedback, craft the development plan, engage their allies, and then come back and measure the progress and the impact on the company. And throughout that, then, it's not only helping to get good constructive feedback for that leader that's solution-oriented, strengths-based, and creates that allyship, but it's actually teaching those feedback skills to each person who's participating. So if somebody is being interviewed, then they're learning those skills of strengths, solution orientation, growth, allyship, and so forth. And there's a number of other questions that are part of that as well, that are based in positive psychology. But it's really taking that individual through that process so that they, as a colleague, learn how to create better feedback for their colleague. So we're going to be launching this in December. We have a webinar and a demonstration on December 13th. I think that Andrew is going to be putting some information in the chat if you want to be part of that, if you want to see that demo of the Shift Positive 360 AI and training on these concepts and the platform. That's actually going to be free. So you can actually be trained in that platform, and you'll even get a free use of the platform to see if that works for you, works in your organization, works for you. And Andrew is going to be putting a link to the website, or feel free to reach out to us directly if you want to discuss how this can help you in your coaching practice or in your company. So I wanted to pause there then and get into questions that you've got and talk a little bit about how we can, any questions that you've got and how we can be helpful to you.
See some folks in deep thought here. Let's see.
Is a profile built beforehand with AI in order to go deeper into the applicable topics? Cheryl, if I understand your question right, what we have trained the AI in is basically our concepts, our philosophy around feedback being relative and relational to the person providing it, that it shouldn't be confidential, that it should be constructive, solution oriented, bringing in appreciative inquiry, understanding strengths, understanding the importance of the goals of the person that's providing feedback, and so forth. What we haven't done is actually built profiles based on particular topics, like how do you give feedback to somebody on emotions? How do you give feedback to somebody who's a micromanager? How do you give feedback to somebody who is this or that? That's actually not necessary in order to create a really powerful experience. So simply by being able to train it in the methodology that you would find in our book there, Feedback Reimagined, it's able to then to actually take people through that process, regardless of the particular topic that they want to get feedback on. Did that answer it for you, Cheryl?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sandra has an interesting question. Does this approach discourage the use of role playing between the coach and the participant?
Between the coach and the discourage the use of role playing between the coach and the participant? I actually have found it to be really helpful with the role playing. I just kind of threw that in at the end there of, wait, before we're done, I want to try this and hear my own voice and hear me trying it and then asking her for feedback on how it came across. So you can use it in that way as well.
It's another tool.
Yeah. What we haven't done, and this is one of the questions that I've got for you, is this is just a GPT that we created to help in those conversations of how do I give somebody tough feedback. This is not actually a product yet. It's not available for sale or to use solely by itself like you saw me doing. But I am curious if there's interest in that. If having this just as a resource that you can talk to or that you can make available to your managers to practice and to talk to might be something that you would be interested in. Because if so, then we'll move in that direction and we'll see about a way to make this available so that anyone, and I can see how it could be really helpful in organizations, managers would be able to, instead of coming off to HR and saying, okay, I got another thing here and scheduling a time, if they could just click on it and say, help me frame this, help me think this through, help me get into the right place so that I can provide constructive feedback. Okay.
You're getting a lot of interest in the comments here. Absolutely's and yeses, has a lot of potential. I keep teasing Pete, it would be great to have at the Thanksgiving dinner table.
When we were practicing with this, we did have to work on that a little bit. So it really helped me to understand how to have conversation with my Uncle Roger at Thanksgiving because we come from very different political spectrums. So, and I think, Kristen, you used it to, what was it again?
Get my son to bring his dishes down from his bedroom.
Good, good. Oh, nice, nice. Okay. Well, are there any other questions that people have? Then I think in a sense of efficiency, and I'm usually a guy that goes over on webinars. I think I'd like to give you a little bit of time back. I'll stick around for the next 10 minutes if anybody would like to have more conversation. Here's a little bit about our team and who we are and what we do. And these are some of the organizations that we work with. And please visit our website, reach out to us if you're interested, if we can be helpful to you in this whole area of constructive feedback. And it's just been my privilege to have you join us. I hope you find this beneficial.
All right, thanks everyone.
All right, I'll stop the recording now.